Welcome to the Who's Left podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm recording from Bloomington. So, this may be the last one of these I do in this format for a while. I resolved in the new year to spend less time editing podcasts and more time just getting valuable information out there. As such, I've got a series of live interviews scheduled in the coming weeks with State House candidates like Nate Stout and Sharon White, labor organizer Mark Gevart, and the multi-talented Indiana's own Dana Black, with more to come. Plus, we've got a series of virtual town halls on the books with congressional candidates Brad Meyer and Jackson Franklin on top of our regular Sunday morning news show. Lots of big things on the horizon here at Who's Left and Progressive Indiana Network. But first, this can't miss conversation I recorded last week with Maria Douglas, co-chair of Hoosier American Power. From her bio at the website, quote, Maria is a transracial Korean adoptee. She has lived in Monroe County for over 30 years and has a master's degree in social work. Maria labels herself as a community servant. She is former vice chair and current member of the Monroe County Women's Commission, advisor for the Bloomington branch of the NAACP Youth Council, and the chair of the schools subcommittee. She co-chairs the Civic Engagement Subcommittee for HAAP. Maria works every day to embody the mantras, if you see something, say something, better together, and if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? This interview is a wide-ranging conversation about Asian American history, identity, political invisibility, and power building, grounded in both historical context and Maria's personal experience and organizing work. I'll frame this discussion by situating Asian American history within the broader, often sanitized story Americans are taught, then hand it to Maria to unpack how Asian American communities have been erased, stereotyped, and fragmented, and what it takes to build political consciousness and collective power, particularly in a place like Indiana. But real quick, before we get to the interview, a big ask. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We don't sell out to advertisers. We don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide valuable information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. You can make a one-time contribution to Who's Left on Cash App or Venmo. Links are in the show notes. Now, if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that's okay. I get it. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, and forwarding articles to your people. You get us the next time. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making this state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, where you don't get that many characters, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others, let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, here's my conversation with Maria Douglas. Hey, welcome, Maria Douglas. Thank you for joining me here tonight on the Who's Left podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you again. You know, you were with us a few weeks ago on the Sunday show. That's always, well, I say it's a good time, but you know, we often have really heavy and unfortunate things to talk about. But you know, I'm glad I get to spend my Sunday morning with friends.
Absolutely.
But you know, this time we get a chance a little bit more to talk about you and to talk about your experience, the organization you work with, Hoosier American Power. But if you don't mind, I kind of want to start out wide and maybe talk a little bit about the history of Asian American peoples migrating to America. When we're in school, right? You get the shiny version of American history, and the Mayflower and the European folks coming over, and certainly, one of the themes running through American history is the Black struggle for equality, and certainly very important that that is centered. Perhaps the most important ongoing dynamic in American history and the American struggle. So, but I don't think spend enough time talking about all of the different folks that have come to this country that have made it great by bringing different perspectives, different cultures to the melting pot, as it were. Certainly, I don't think we give enough due to the Native American folks, the people who originally inhabited this land, and from whom it was stolen, and we committed a genocide on this continent as the American government did, and all of us living here today, are living on stolen land, and that's a whole other episode, right? But we don't, I think, spend nearly enough time talking about the Asian American story. Um, so I don't know if you can sort of enlighten us, perhaps, and talk about when folks from East Asia and South Asia began migrating to the United States, and then maybe we can trace that migration to here in Indiana and talk a little bit about the Asian American experience in the Hoosier State.
Mhm. Thank you for all of that, and I echo your, words in terms of the ongoing struggles that, people who are Black have in this country, and, that we are living and building capitalism on we're not building capitalism, but we're perpetuating capitalism sometimes, on stolen ground. So thank you for that, and thank you for the introduction. And it's interesting, I, an Asian American, I had to do a little bit of research, right? Because I grew up I've been in well, I know we'll talk about this later maybe. I grew up, in Indiana, for the last 40 years, 45 years. I came here when I was 5, and so I've been in the public school system since then. So what I knew about Asian Americans was that the Chinese people, which I'm not Chinese, so I was like, oh, just in my with my internalized racism and um, uh, model minority, holding on to whatever scraps I could get, right, growing up. All I knew about Asian people were the Chinese built the railroad or had a lot to do with building railroads, and I'm like, yeah, it was just a whole very quick thing. That's all I knew. So I had to do some research. I mean, I know, the some of the immigration laws that have, come down from what 1882, and things like that. But I had to like really dig in a little bit to see, exactly what started it, like what was going on. So my I say all that to say that we don't learn a whole bunch. Just like you said, we don't learn a whole lot, if any, except for that railroad piece, um, about, the Asian American experience. And so, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, came about just in terms of um, fear is
Mm.
what I think, what I'm reading, what I read, what I have read. Some of the books that, that I have read prior and then revisited, are Yellow by Frank H. Wu, The Color of Success, Asian Americans and the Origins of the Model Minority by Ellen D. Wu. No relation, and Ellen is actually a professor here at Indiana University.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah, and so, again, I say all that to say I had to do my own research because I'm like, exactly what were these things? What was what was going on? And so it's interesting that I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it's interesting that, African Americans were brought here to do
Mhm.
work. Chinese were brought here to do work.
Yeah.
And in term from with these are my words and my understanding, colorism played a big role in how uh white Americans decided, "Oh, we're gonna try to assimilate these people. We're gonna Chinese. We're gonna try to assimilate these people and basically make them see if they can, act like us white people. See if they will buy into our culture, leave their culture behind." And that's a very important part. It wasn't
Mm.
like assimilate, hold on to your culture, accept our culture. It was no, leave your culture behind, forget it, and accept ours. And so it's just over time, I think we see this that when people are useful, when things are useful, um, yeah, they're more protected, of course. And
Mhm.
then that fear of being overpowered or not having as much power as they feel that they should, in terms of, or for example, Japanese and farming. They passed some laws about owning land.
Mm.
So so to push Japanese out of farming, that was even before the Chinese came on the radar in terms of, oh, they're being I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And in terms of what, you know, they want us to assimilate, they wanted us to assimilate, and what precipitated the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 is Chinese were doing too good of a job assimilating. And so it was like, "Oh no, model minor, oh no," and now we need to, because we're afraid to lose power, we're going to do this Exclusion Act of 1882. I mean, I
Maria,
could go
like,
on, but go on.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm as you're beginning to introduce these concepts, it's like, oh man, this stuff sounds familiar. You're talking about like banning the Japanese folks from owning land in this country. Like now, I'm thinking like the Indiana state legislature is talking about banning firms that have associations with the Chinese Communist Party from owning land here in Indiana, and white supremacy is it evolves and it always needs an other. The other
Mhm.
changes depending on need, I
Mhm.
guess. Um, and or you can have a whole basket of others. Yeah, white supremacy is not exclusive in that way. You can hate all you can hate the entire rainbow, but you mentioned the Chinese Exclusion Act. I always think about that's sort of like where we're introduced, I think, if we're introduced to the Asian American struggle in America is there with the railroads, with these companies bringing in cheap labor, um, using it up, and then telling them to go away,
Mhm.
go back where you came from, right? That you hear that one a lot too, and then
Literally, literally.
if you carry that forward a few decades, I'm thinking of the 1920s, the Immigration Act of 1924, which certainly was targeted at, say, Southern European Catholics, Eastern European Jews, but also um, Asian migration as well.
Yeah, all Asians is what, um, in that 1924. And you're right. I mean, I have noted just because, in terms of the legislation session, organizations and the coalitions or collaboratives that this organization is a part of, we're currently watching House Bill 1099. Foreign adversaries, prohibits state universities from admitting Chinese, Russian, Iranian, or North Korean students into certain engineering, technology, or medical programs. Prohibits citizens of residents of China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea from purchasing, inheriting, or otherwise acquiring land or property in Indiana. I mean, we are literally talking about the same thing. And get this, today I just saw someone posted it from the Associated Press just today. The State Department said it will suspend the processing of immigrant visas for citizens of 75 countries. And in that, we can put it maybe in the show notes, in terms of the resource to the Associated Press article. But yeah, sound familiar? Sounds real familiar.
It does, it does, and you can move forward a couple more decades. If you look at around World War II, Japanese internment, a real stain on our history, of which we have many, but that one especially. And look, I America is a lot of things, right? And the right accuses the left of hating America, and because we look at the times when we have fallen short of our stated values, and even when we do good, like I'm a huge FDR guy, love me some New Deal, favorite president ever, but that was him. He
Yep.
did the Japanese internment. So even when we do good, there's bad. Even when we do bad, there's some good in there. It's complicated, it's nuanced, things are never simple. Um, but but that was not that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
Fascinatingly, not that long ago. And it's just interesting, this it's the concept of power and how it is gotten, for lack of, and how it is kept, and who can have it and who can't, is just quite a phenomenon. And so then the it seems in history, the struggle for power always includes violence, either physical violence, usually, or mental, emotional, violence, who that can be just as deadly, uh, just as harmful as physical
Absolutely.
violence. Um, I had no idea about the Japanese internment camp until I read Ellen's book just a couple years ago. Like, I had no idea that that had happened. I'm curious if my parents knew. I'm curious if my and what we but I'm curious if my parents ever thought about telling me about that. Um, they didn't, but I did not even know, Scott, about that this had happened in this country not
It,
long
it
ago.
shameful
Yeah.
that we don't. I mean, if you look at the way the Germans have addressed their um, crimes as a society under the Nazi regime, in the 30s and 40s. Um, every school kid is taught about that, so we don't repeat those patterns.
Mm.
Um, Here, I think things are glossed over. Now, folks our age, I think our generation, we began to examine some of our societal shortcomings, and maybe the folks a little bit younger than us, but there's been a real backlash in the last couple years to discussing these things. They're trying to make that against the law too. I
Mhm.
believe that's up for debate in the state house this year as well. There's a bill that talks about divisive social issues like
Mm.
racism, sexism, and like if you don't talk about these things,
Mm.
if you don't address where you've gone wrong, that you don't know what to look out for and what to correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes. So to that point, you'll see a lot of, not a lot, some more organizations putting a lot of emphasis on storytelling, because we cannot count on books, we cannot count on the materials that are going to educate our children to have true history. So it's extremely important to have that, and indigenous people knew that. Is that storytelling piece. The reading and the research that I've done to teach myself about Asian American history uh, talks a lot about how the United States didn't necessarily decide on their own, or thought, oh, we're not doing right by these people. Like they didn't come to that conclusion. They were embarrassed on the global stage. It was being said that the United States was having its own, race war situation, and it was embarrassing to them. So it was only, I mean, from my research and my interpretation, it was only because they were embarrassed about the decisions and their actions that they decided to, oh yeah, no, we're going to have, a couple ways for you to be able to leave this camp, these camps. You can either enroll in the military, or you can
Mhm.
take resettlement, and we'll spread you around, and maybe, put you up in a small home, or, something like that. But that's all. And then you're going to forget this all happened, basically. Clearly my words.
Right.
But it was
And
just because they were embarrassed.
well, and the the embarrassment, the shame, and look, the demands for power, the demands for equality by marginalized groups. If you look at when we as a country finally started to rectify the situation in the mid 60s, it goes hand in hand with the civil rights movement.
Mhm,
And so you've got the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and then you've got the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 right there happening around the same time. And
mhm,
so you've got black folks in this country finally gaining equality, and we've got the government also changing their um, archaic immigration policies, their draconian 1920s era policies, and opening up this country to immigration from Asia and from places that we had not had it before. And you look at the Korean War, the Vietnam War. Whenever we engage, uh, Afghanistan, more recently, Iraq. I mean, if you look at whenever we go engage overseas, you've got folks that are working with the American government, with the troops, with the military, and when we exit, we oftentimes bring some of those folks with us. And every time, we get an influx of new different cultures and new different peoples into this country, and really just increases the diversity and the flavor. I, I if we may, like, I think of nothing as more American than Chinese food on Christmas Day, like, and that goes back at least 100 years now. Like it's part of the fabric of America at this point.
Mhm. Yeah. I will say, I'm curious. I'll pose this question, you don't necessarily have to answer. Have we really exited from these places?
Good point.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because, in Korea, they still consider themselves occupied. For the last time I heard, we were still sending, some of our troops to Afghanistan and Iran, and of course, supporting other military actions with our dollars. Um, in terms of Korea and Japan, I mean, Japan colonized Korea, and then the United States came in to help, but
Yeah.
then they ended up doing the same thing to Korea, and they're still there. They're still there.
To this day, technically, there's still a state of war that exists.
That's right.
The Korean War never there was never a treaty signed. It's basically just a 70-year long ceasefire at this point.
That's right. And who knows that? Not that many people, right? And so in terms of what we in Western education and such, or just in Western culture, what we learn about, let's say, Koreans or Asians are so, I say it, even Asians, or we're not a monolith. There, as we were talking
Yeah,
before we start.
huge. Asia's like a massive continent. It's the
So
biggest
many.
continent, the most populated continent. Like, yeah, Asian means a lot of things.
Yeah, and so I'm from Korea, or I was born in Korea, so South Korean. Well, south of what? South of what exactly? You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
all these names are just, it's just very interesting how everything happens. And so in in the United States and Western civilization or cultures, are the depiction or the representation of Asian Americans slim to none. But then when we look at, and I'm sorry, maybe this was a Rob Reiner film. Um, that was a throwback to my crashing and burning it with my first question in the live show. Um, I think it was 16 Candles, Long Duck Dong. Was that
I
16
want
or
to say
Pretty in
that's John
Pink?
Hughes, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So, okay, see, it's fine. But anyway, one of the first looks people had at an Asian person in pop culture. Unless you were some of those people who watch the old kung fu movies, right, with the
Mhm.
voiceovers and the whatevers, and then you thought, oh, everyone does kung fu, everybody does martial arts in Asia, in these Asian countries. And just really, I follow this person on TikTok who her mission, her life's work is documenting the Asian representation in pop culture, and it's fascinating. It is
I
fascinating.
bet. Yeah.
I love Charlie's Angels, the movie, I was like, "Oh, look, this is a big deal. Lucy Liu, like, she's a lead star. Like, this is a big deal." Back then it was. Now, so problematic. So problematic. The model minority myths, the references to comfort women, which are also known as
Mm,
prostitutes, are also known as people who have been human
yeah.
trafficked. They call them comfort women, and what if you're not for it, you probably are, but if any listeners not familiar, it's again back in Korea, literally these camps of Korean women who were human trafficked, so forced, coerced, kidnapped into serving the American soldiers sexually, were called comfort women. Comfort, isn't that nice? Like, comfort, so comforting. No,
Yeah. Well, and, I've heard about the the under Japanese occupation this happening, and they were
all
still
through.
Japan and Korea were still uh fighting over this like recently within the last couple of years, if I recall. We never hear about the
That's right.
American soldiers doing this.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting. Yes. No, you're absolutely right. It's throughout Japanese and Korean, that history. And that's interesting that, yeah, we only heard about, yeah, no. And that's why, and this leads to like my personal story. This is why or how a lot of Korean women were able to come to the United States um, from being in relationships with American GIs and or children were made and came over and or left in Korea, and then Korea's response social reform or justice help assistance plan was to then adopt everybody out. And so that was a huge I am a victim of human trafficking because I was sold to my parents here in America in the United States. And
Jeez.
yeah, and so we're a lot 200,000 over 200,000 Korean adoptees during the uh, early 70s to mid 90s.
Wow, that is number one, a very large, time span, but also again, like that's yesterday in in historical terms, you know.
Yep. Yep. So, I
S-
mean, it
Can
was
you, if you
yeah.
can, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, we were exports, literally, because, I know I like to say literally a lot. I've known that. I've caught that in other things that I've done, but also literally, okay? But we paid for, the Korean Army. We got Korea out of debt with this exporting of children. The Korea has, let's see, last year, it was a big deal. I think it was last year or end of 24. I can't remember. I think it was end of 24. Korea finally admitted to these things. So it's not hearsay. It's not, oh, I'm a bitter adoptee or there's a whole 200,000 bitter adoptee. No, Korea finally admitted that this is what they did. And the spoils, what they got out of it, out of national debt, and then paid for their army.
I imagine. I mean, since I mean, you're talking about your personal life,
Mhm.
you got to have some complicated feelings around all this.
Yeah, so it's interesting, or maybe not, maybe not interesting. So I consider myself out of the fog is what specifically Korean adoptees talk about, transracial Korean adoptees, and that means that we are Korean children, people that were born in Korea and then adopted by somebody who wasn't Korean. So, and
Okay.
usually white, right? And so, white Christian, there's a whole that's a whole nother conversation also, the demographic that, anyway. So sundowning, what was your question?
Well, I mean, you've got to have
Oh, feeling,
complicated
yeah.
feelings about this. I mean, you said you were born in Korea. Do you remember any of
No,
that?
no. I was 3 months old, supposedly, when I was found on the steps of a government building. And that's what I've always been told. I was found, my mother loved me, my birth mother loved me. I was found on the steps of the government building when I was 3 months old. Now we know that children literally were stolen from the hospitals. Their parents told that they were dead, were bought from very, very poor rural families, and were sometimes, taken off the street. Korea also had this practice where there were orphanages, and you could actually leave your children in these orphanages for X amount of time while you got yourself back on your feet. Like, you experienced a hardship, drop your kid off at the orphanage, sign the paper, I'll be back in a month or 3 months or something like that. And guess what? When the parents came back, their babies were gone. And so I've been that's why I started. I've been out of the fog probably for about coming out 5 years, definitely, fully out 4 years. And as I mentioned in the live show that we did, I'm 3.5, almost 4 years into sobriety from alcohol. From I'm an alcoholic. And so all of this of coming out of the fog in terms of adoption, um, and uh, becoming politicized all kind of came at the same time. I've always been an action person. I've always, like, been a critical thinker, even though my parents, who were very, very Lutheran, really did not want me to be. And so throughout my life, I've gone back and forth between, being a good Christian and not asking questions and not meditating and not doing yoga and not doing the things that really heal you, you know? And so yeah, lots of feelings. And the reason why um y- we say out of the fog is because me growing up, people were all the adoption trope is you should be so thankful. You should be so grateful that
Mhm.
you have this life, that you were brought to here, to the United States of America. Look at the wonderful life that you have. You have no idea what like kind of life. Your mother was probably a prostitute. That was told to me also.
Oh my god.
Yeah, your mother was probably a prostitute and couldn't afford to keep you, and so you're so much better off here. And this isn't just my story, Scott, because when I started listening to podcasts, there's podcasts out there. When I started, Patrick Armstrong, he's a very outspoken Korean adoptee from the Indianapolis area. He's a speaker. He has his own podcast and such. And when his post started coming over my LinkedIn feed of all things, I was like, wait a minute, that's my story. He was left in the middle of town. And I was like, what? And so he was talking about him coming out, doing more research and suggesting these other podcasts. And as I thought I was getting sober, I was listening to these podcasts, anything, because my main job was to not drink. So I would do anything, I would listen, to things and these podcasts. And more often than not, the story was you were left. You were abandoned somewhere. We found you in the bushes. Like and it's just no, no, no. So many. And then when Korea came out finally in 24, I believe it was the end of 24. There was a documentary out too that admitted to these practices. That was life shattering. I thought that I was, pretty much taking these things in stride. I'm like, okay, this is making more sense. Like this is, the pieces are fitting together, even though I didn't know that they weren't somehow. But then when Korea admitted to it, the adoption community was rocked because there's some of us that never questioned it. So, talk about a gaping wound. Like, there's a lot of us, some of us, I can't say how many, but we already started down that journey. We had already started down that path, but some people had not. Some people had never questioned their story that they were told.
And I mean, your adoptive parents, do they I mean, they probably just wanted to have a child. I mean, they're not complicit in the horrors that went into getting Korean babies here. But it's still gotta complicate things when you think about your childhood and think about the way you were raised and think about growing up. And it, just processing that now and as adult and looking back, it's got to be a mind fuck.
It really it really it really is. And, but as I alluded to before, there seems to be from my research, from, belonging to Korean adoptee groups, that meet over Zoom on the regular, and then there's, of course, groups on Facebook and all sorts of, things, organizations. There's a certain type of people that adopted these are us, 'cause these Korean children. So Holt International is one of the most famous, adoption agencies, and he was
Mm,
very Christian, and it was all supposedly started very philanthropically, very white savior-y, and
mhm.
so then when they figured out that there was money to be made from the Korean social workers. I'm a social worker. I have my master's in social workers are on record now from Korea saying they went and bought children from poor rural families. Social worker. Anyway, so so whereas our adoptive parents weren't necessarily actively participating in the cover up and actively participating necessarily in, well, I can't even say that. I think they did participate in human trafficking. They just weren't they just like the comfort women, they called it adoption instead of human trafficking.
Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, how does that make you feel?
Okay, feeling words. Feeling words. Very, sad, curious, like almost curiosity to the point where it's like you can like coming out, just you want to jump out of your body. You're so curious of who is who are your people? Where did you spend 9 months in utero? Where was that? Who was that? Um I'm getting away from feeling words. Confused, angry. We are angry. I am angry. I'm angry at the Korean government. I'm angry at the United States government because they were complicit. Um, and at times I've felt very lost and alone. A lot, and not just at times, a lot of times, because I grew up literally in the middle of cornfields in Hamilton County. Like, I
Yeah.
was, like, the only there was a Hispanic family, and then there was, like, me holding down the diversity for Hamilton Heights High School or, school district, and, there was always I know now, I was even thinking about this morning, that the more I unmask, the more neurodivergent I am, I think. But I didn't even know. I didn't even know, because I've been masking this whole time, and not on purpose, really, but to get along, to survive, to be included, to belong, I just did I just did it. I didn't really have anyone else, to look to. I didn't know anybody else that looked like me. I, you know, who my I was obsessed when I was young with beauty pageants. Like, what the hell? Because what are you gonna see on beauty pageants back in the '80s? Like, big blonde hair, blue-eyed people, right? And I'm like, and I wanted to be that so bad. And, so I had to, like, leave myself. I whoever myself was, I think I had to really I know, I had to really leave myself, and it's only in the past 5 years that I've regained a semblance of who I am outside, under that mask, outside of the masking.
And
Exhausting too is how I feel sometimes.
yeah,
Exhausted. Yeah.
yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, like we're all wearing a mask in this world, but it's a whole other level when you've got to do the quote unquote assimilation. You got to fit into like a white supremacist society, and you got to uh, be demure and not offend anybody, and just it's a whole extra set of hoops to jump through for non-white, non-male, non-Christian folks in this country where where you're not the quote unquote default setting, right? But I imagine you know the unmasking and really discovering yourself and being able to process those feelings kind of goes hand in hand with finding other Asian American Hoosiers that you can talk
Mhm.
to, maybe learn about their family experience, and I want to talk about that a little bit about the Hoosier Asian American community, and I assume certainly a lot of folks made their way here the way you did. Other folks, their families came over after the Immigration Act of 1965. But I know Asian Americans have been in Indiana longer than that. I mean, listen, it was just Christmas a few weeks ago. We've all seen A Christmas Story. That movie is set in Northwest Indiana.
That's
And the culmination of the movie, it ends with the Chinese restaurant on Christmas Day. So it's like I said, it's part of the American fabric going back, boy, at least 100 years at this point.
Yeah. So after 1965, in terms of the Immigration and Nationality Act, it that started to change Indiana's demographics. Immigrants from, and again, I'm looking at my notes because I had to research this, from India, China, Korea, and the Philippines and Taiwan entered through professional, medical, and academic pathways. And so then that clearly caused Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Bloomington, West Lafayette, wherever the universities are, to have a higher population. And then later, the Southeast Asian refugees, Vietnam or Vietnamese, Cambodian, and Lao families came after the Vietnam War. So um, now, there's eh, I would say that the population is about the same in those same areas that not the same, but I mean in those same areas that I mentioned. So a lot of Asian immigrants came, for education, seen as temporary,
Yeah.
temporary visas or whatnot, to attend school. Um, and then, as we know, as you mentioned, in terms of the, Chinese food restaurants and such, and starting to, permanently stay and buy land. And then, like you said, the immigrants. And so, in terms of finding, this is, I know we're coming up on time. So, in growing up, I thought when I came to college, which I did here at Indiana University, I thought, oh, I'll find my people. Well, I came to college, I found other Koreans and other Asian Americans, but they were Korean Koreans, like us adoptees call them, or they were real Asians, like we also call people. And so I was like, and I couldn't fit in with them. I grew up in the Midwest. So I, stuck between, as many people are in terms of, groups and cultures and ethnicities. Uh, as you said, kind of at the introduction of this question, or this part of the conversation, finding Hoosier Asian American power actually came through violence when the student was stabbed in the head on our bus here in Bloomington, on Bloomington Transit bus in 23 or early 24. I can't remember. But she was a Chinese
Right.
student, and it was, do you remember? Yeah. And we attended it was pushed to be a hate crime. We put out a lot of statements and support that it should be tried as a hate crime because of the report from bystanders, eyewitnesses that heard the perpetrators say, "Go back to where you came from, you Chinese," whatever. And it was tried as a hate crime after a while. Hate crimes are very hard to try here in Indiana because of the nebulous, language. Um, so because I was in the process of coming out of the fog and really accepting my identity in totality for the first time, um, I was rocked by that, because also it was here in my home, in my hometown, in our hometown. And someone that I had intentionally made acquaintance with is April Hennessy. She's the outgoing school board president of MCCSC. I had done a 13-month stint attending school board meetings and advocating for school safety. And so I had just reached out to her. Like, literally, I had maybe two Asian friends, one and a half, because one is a Wasian, and no shade, and the other one is in Indianapolis, and I had never really met her. We had just corresponded on Facebook. So I reached out to April and I said, I don't want to talk about school board things. I do want to talk about being Korean. And she met me, and we became fast friends, and the rest is history. And she introduced me to this group of women that now make up Hoosier Asian American Power. And I have never been in a more powerful room than with these women. Um, and still, not to keep complaining, but this is just reality. And still, I'm a little bit of an anomaly, because sometimes they'll reference, how aunties and uncles are, blah blah blah, Asian aunties and uncles, and I'm like, I'll take your word for it, because I don't know. So still a little bit um
Stuck in between. Yeah.
yeah, but powerful women, powerful organization. We're getting ready to celebrate our second birthday. It's only been 2 years, but prior to that, a lot of the core team was, with NAPOF. Um, that's a national organization. So they've been
Mm.
actually doing this work since about 2018.
Oh, fantastic. So, I guess what is it you all do at Hoosier Asian American Power? I mean, I understand, like you said, you advocated for the hate crimes charges in that particular horrific case. But I also understand this is a feminist organization. This is women. Yeah.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Our purpose statement, as purpose statements goes or whatever, is see, I don't have it memorized. Okay, so we mobilize Asian Americans to cultivate a healthy democracy and an inclusive and equitable Indiana through advocacy and community organizing. So advocacy and community organizing is what we do. Our three pillars are healthy democracy, reproductive justice, and racial equity. So in 2025, well, we real advocate, we learn, we educate, we testify and at the state house for or against bills specifically around immigration and voting rights. And we are in 26. I'm sorry, I thought I was frozen. In 26, we are intentionally building an Asian American collaborative. Uh, we aim to convene Asian American organizations around the state of Indiana to build power.
Well, and I guess like none too soon, right? Kind of good thing that you've started organizing when you did, because eh, folks have to band together now. I mean, I've never seen such overt white supremacy in my lifetime as we're seeing out of our own federal government right now. You've got ICE and DHS and Stephen Miller, and they're talking about remigration, like that is a neo-Nazi term, which basically means ethnic cleansing, which means go back where you came from, right? They're talking
Mhm,
about, this concept of heritage Americans, and they want America to be for heritage Americans and not for these others. And like again, we're talking about this goes back decades. This goes back centuries. That Asian American people have been in this country. At what point do you become a heritage American? Um,
mhm,
the folks who built this railroad have been in this country longer than Stephen Miller's family have, for
mhm,
example.
mhm. Yeah, that's all, you called it out, the term heritage, these um, different terms are supposed to not be, explicitly racial, but they are. So I do want to make a plug for in terms of calling, things what they are, comfort women versus human trafficking or prostitutes, adoption versus being human trafficked, and then heritage being a very racist um term.
Hmm.
um there and also wanted to bring up, and I know we're at close to time, the situation of white supremacists with Asian women wives, with Asian wives. It's a thing.
This guy that killed Renee Good in Minnesota apparently has a Filipino wife.
That's right.
And right, it's like, well, a little bit of flavor for me, but not for thee. Like
Yeah, yeah, and our vice president's wife is South Asian. In the New York Times, again, there's an article that actually quotes Ellen Wu's book. It was from 2018. It's called "The Alt-Right's Asian Fetish." And it's
mhm.
mostly around the model minority myth, and then also that Asian women are docile, are very subservient, are and you said demure to me a little bit ago, and in my adult life, I don't, and I know you weren't necessarily saying it about me, but I just want to say for the record, in my adult life, nobody has ever called me demure. So I just wanted to be clear. But anyway, alt right does have an Asian fetish. And it's a thing. So the more that these people are the alt right is brought up into public, and we're looking into their lives, and we're seeing who their families are and who they're married to. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised that to find that, and it is very confusing. And I always comment if it's commentable, I'll say, "Someone go save her." Like, somebody go save her, because 1, clearly she's not able to save herself, and 2, she needs to be saved. So, anyway, just wanna also get that little piece in there.
But, I mean, when you've got these thugs on the streets that are basically just picking up people that look different, um, at what point does one of these guys grab one of his buddy's wives? And then what?
Interesting, then what? We'll probably find out, just as reckless as they're being and as lawless as they're being, we'll find out, and it'll yeah, because there's that whole phenomenon. I mean, it's a real, human nature-ish situation that, it doesn't become important until it happens to you. And also my guess is that she's disposable to him.
Wow.
Because if she's seen as an object, as a
Yeah.
thing, and things can be replaced. So that's my guess if that happens.
So, boy, Maria, I hate to end on like a downer note, but it's we're in a downer kind of time. It's it's rough out there, and again, rougher out there for people who don't look like me, and that's like I don't know. I'm sorry on behalf of all white guys.
Oh gosh.
We're the worst.
No, you know what? That's not necessary, and I know you know that, and I appreciate you, but also just keep doing the work. Keep being an ally, and even more so, and I think you are because you're in the trenches. Like, keep being an accomplice, right? That's really all that it takes, is to be accomplice. Do not be silent. This is not the time. This is not the time. Not that it's ever a time to, in my opinion, but this is not the time to be silent.
No, no, not at all. Whatever privilege you've got, you got to use it. Now's the time.
Mhm.
Like that's what it's for. So I guess Maria, what can allies do to help out Hoosier Asian American Power? Where can we find your organization
Mhm.
and learn more about it? What do you need from us?
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much. So, our website is HoosierAAP.org, and our handles on all socials are is also Hoosier AAP. So on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And what you can do is, a lot of people, some people, they don't know what to do, so they stay quiet, or they're like, what I can, the thing that I can do is too small. Nothing is too small. You hear somebody make a joke. You hear somebody use a term or a euphemism that maybe you grew up with, but you know that it's based in racism. Please call attention to it. And it doesn't have to be an adversarial thing. You can study, communications and strategies in terms of, that's interesting that you said that. Or can you say more? Could you tell me more about what you just said? It doesn't have to be like, don't say that. Like, you could, that's racist. No, have the conversation, be curious, but don't let it slide. Don't let it slide.
Well, Maria, thank you. Thank you for what you do out there. Thank you for sharing your story with us. It's a lot of, heavy personal stuff. Every time you stop by, like, you, um, you open up to us and, we appreciate that. It really, It's an honor,
Thank you, thank you. And I'm gonna say, just give you a little insight. It's a little bit selfish on my part, because I heal a little bit each time I can talk about this. So thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're always here. Whenever you want to talk about it, you hit me up, and the floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, Maria Douglas, thank you so much for joining us here on the Who's Left podcast. Once again, that was Maria Douglas, co-chair of Hoosier Asian American Power, with a deeply personal yet historically grounded conversation about Asian American identity, erasure, and power in the United States. We talked about how the shiny version of American history leaves out whole communities, how Asian Americans are often rendered invisible or boxed into the model minority myth, and why storytelling itself becomes an act of resistance when institutions refuse to tell your story. Maria connected early Asian migration to the present day, traced what it meant to be to build community and political consciousness in a place like Indiana, and made the case that real power starts with unmasking, with solidarity, and with showing up as a full human being in the political process. And I'd appreciate if you human beings would show up this Sunday morning for Who's Left this week, streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course at the new progressiveindiana.net, Indiana's most thorough weekend news and politics talk show. It is a lot of fun if you can call following the news in this timeline fun. My panel and I go around the corn to cover all the week's top Indiana news stories and look at U.S. and international happenings through a Hoosier lens. I hope to see you there in the comments. But if you can't make it live, the program will be available for download later Sunday afternoon. Thanks once again to Maria for this interview and for opening up to all of us. One last reminder, to please consider supporting Who's Left and the wider Progressive Indiana Network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also really use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle. Over on Blue Sky and TikTok, you can find us at PIN Indiana. You can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us. It's at Who's Left on all the rest. Send me a direct message at any of those sites with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.